So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Total Drama, so let's start the series. Yo! We're coming at you live from Camp Wawanakua somewhere in Mikasa, Ontario, and I'm your host, Chris McLean, dropping season 1 of the hottest news shows on television right now. Chris, a typical Caucasian man who appeared to be in his late 20s to early 30s, stood 5 feet 5 inches tall, had brown eyes, dark black hair that reached slightly past his neckline, a boxy face with a defined chin and a permanent 5 o'clock shadow, wore a long white-sleeved button-up jean jacket, khaki jeans, and green/white Converse, accessorizing it all with a simple dark seashell necklace. The deal is that 23 campers have committed to spending 8 weeks at the former summer camp. They will compete in challenges against one another and then have to deal with the criticism of their fellow campers. Every 3 days, one team will either receive a reward or witness one of their team members walk down the dock of shame to the loser boat and permanently depart Total Drama Island. As he continued his speech, Chris approached the campfire pit, which displayed 11 cut log seats for each camper. Their fate will be decided at a dramatic campfire ceremonies. Each week all but one camper will receive a marshmallow, Chris said, displaying the marshmallow resting on a trash can before being eaten. Holding up a treasure chest of the $100,000 in jewels, the speaker says, in the end, only one will be left standing and will be rewarded with cheesy tabloid fame. That's because, let's face it, they'll probably blow in a week. To survive, they'll have to battle flies, grizzly bears, disgusting camp food, and each other. Every moment will be captured on one of the hundreds of cameras placed all over the camp. Who will give out under the pressure? Learn more right now on Drama, Island, Total, and more. Theme music. Welcome back to Total Drama Island. It's time to meet our first 12 campers. We told them they were staying at a 5-star resort, so if they seem a little pissed off that's probably why, Chris says with a grin. The first contestant to arrive was Beth, a very happy teenager with a typical farm girl appearance. She was a little on the plump side and had chestnut brown hair pulled back in a high ponytail. She wore a green and gold shirt with a variety of pin-on buttons to remind her of her time in the Girl Scouts, as well as pale pink slacks. Beth also wore traditional Coke bottle glasses and braces she had gotten stuck with in high school. Chris said, "Beth, what's up?" to the cheery female. Beth's manner was as awkward as her figure, which annoyed Chris a little because he hated it when people brought out his height. "It's so incredulous to meet you," Beth exclaimed as she ran up to embrace Chris, adding, "Wow, you look shorter in real life." Thanks," said Chris sardonically. DJ was the next person to arrive. He was tall, dark-skinned, and at least 6 feet tall. His brown hair was covered by a white do-rag, and he had what appeared to be a blown-colored underbeard that connected to his soul patch. He was wearing a puke green shirt with a faded orange D in the middle, faded black shorts, and brown sandals. His physique gave the impression that he was athletic and could compete fiercely, but he was actually the biggest softy and typically terrified of the smallest things. Chris called out to the second competitor, DJ. He looked about after reading in the contract that there was a hot tub. "Yo! Chris McLean, how's it going? Hey, you sure this is the right place here? Where is the hot tub at?" he inquired. "Yo, dog! This is Camp Wawanakua," Chris exclaimed, shifting the conversation and pointing in the direction of the campsite. DJ complained, "Humph. Looked a lot different in the application form," as he gathered his belongings and left. Chris says, "Hey Gwen." Gwen glances around and asks, "You mean we're here?" She is unsure if the trailer in the distance will accommodate even a few candidates. Chris chuckles and points to the ancient log houses, saying, "No, you're staying here." "The trailer is mine and comes with AC, he adds. "I did not sign up for this," frowns Gwen. "Actually, you did," Chris adds with a smirk, holding up a contract before Gwen snatches it and tears it to pieces. "Funny thing about lawyers, they make lots of copies," Chris mockingly remarks as he takes out an additional copy. She obstinately declares, "I'm not staying here." He draws her attention by saying, "Well, I hope you're a good swimmer because your boat just left," before she groans and goes to join the other competitors. Jeff was the fourth contestant to arrive. He was a 5 feet 9 inches party boy who always wanted to be the life of the party, but he was never bothered because he was one of the older contestants. His blonde hair was covered by a large tan Sierra hat, and his sky blue eyes matched his bright smile. Despite the amount of beer he usually drank, you could tell he was well built, as he wore an open bright pink button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up, faded jeans shorts that were strangely held up by a shoelace that served as a belt, and the traditional beach sandals. Chris McLean. "Hey man, it's a pleasure to meet you," the party boy said, giving the host a fist bump. "The Jeff Steer." Chris returned the greeting with a fist, "Welcome to the island, man." Jeff said, "Hey thanks man," as the camera shifted to Gwen, who was seeing the two. "I'm going to throw up if they mention guy again." "Everyone, this is Lindsay," Chris adds as a blonde gets off the next boat as it approaches. The initial competitors gazed at Lindsay with admiration and criticism. Although her flawless appearance attracted the attention of men and some women, they typically assumed that Lindsay was a simpleton and would be among the first campers to leave. Regretfully, she only wanted to make friends because she had none in school and her wealth was increasing more quickly than others. Chris laughs, not too shabby, as he glances at her through the webcam. Lindsay remarks, "Hey, you look familiar," upon spotting Chris. "I'm Chris McLean, the host of the show," Chris deadpants, seeming a touch annoyed near the end. "Oh, that's where I know you from," Lindsay said sheepishly, beaming. As she took in her surroundings, she took off her sunglasses with a glare that could have scared almost anyone. Her snobbish aura was so obvious that the other contestants had to sign it, and because she was so self-centered, she didn't introduce herself. Beth tried to talk to her, but every word she said made her salivate, so she ignored her completely while loud rock music played in the background. A punk-type teen with a wiry, lean build, approximately 5 feet 7 inches, dark green hair styled in a mohawk, fair, light skin that would normally be seen on any normal Canadian, a soul patch resting beneath his lip and a unibrow above his eyes that he recently acquired from his time in juvenile hall, a spiked choker around his neck to ward off anyone who might try to approach him, and a black shirt with a yellow long sleeve underneath that reached past his black shirt, a yellow skull emblem in the middle of his chest, dark blue jeans that sagged down to his ankles, concealing his socks, and reaching his red high-top Converse. Chris said, "Duncan, dude," greeting him. "I don't like surprises," Duncan said, glancing at him and clenching his fist. Chris beams. "Yeah, your parole officer told me that. He also said to give him a holler anytime and have you return to juvie." After scoffing, Duncan turns to face Heather and tries to flirt with her, but she is shot down with a firm, "Get bent, loser," as Chris pulls out her contact to silence her. Heather continues to sob about how miserable the island is. Chris says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tyler," as a second boat approaches. A 5 feet 8 inches brown-haired teen with a red, white, and blue headband is skiing behind the boat. He is wearing a full red jumpsuit and white sneakers with sweatbands on his wrists and ankles. As he approached the dock, the boat veered at an insane angle, flinging Tyler and his luggage into the dock itself in a crazy crash. Everyone recoiled as Tyler's face struck the dock before sinking into the water below. Chris remarks, "Wicked," as Tyler stands up and identifies himself as a sports enthusiast who enjoys all things physical. Naturally, he leaves out the fact that he is incredibly uncoordinated and goes to stand with the others as a second boat swiftly drops off the camper and departs. The remaining teen wore thick, squared glasses, had a crop of brick-red hair on his head that was likely intended to be a soul patch, and had white skin and green eyes. He was dressed in a blue shirt with a hamburger in the center and some stars over a faded pick long sleeve, green pants, and blue high tops. Each competitor has previously labeled Harold as an awkward-looking child with a know-it-all personality who was shunned at school. "Welcome, Harold," Chris begins before the nerd continues to talk about how his talents are more advantageous here, making Chris cringe as he takes his position with the others. The next person to arrive was a laid-back-looking teenager with light green eyes and shaggy black hair. He was dressed casually to fit his easygoing demeanor, with a green shirt featuring a black handprint and a long green camo undershirt halfway tucked in that exposed his belt, which supported his green running shoes and black skinny jeans. Trent was carrying an outdoor pack on his back to carry all of his musical necessities, as evidenced by the acoustic guitar case. Chris says, "Trent, welcome," and then they begin talking about how Trent saw him at a figure skating show and gloated about it until Beth mentioned that Chris's partner had been dropped on his head. Trent then asks about the camp, but when he doesn't hear back, he walks away and stands next to Gwen, giving her his well-known ladies' man smile. The girl said, "Hey, what's up, all right?" Chris says, "Our surfer chick, Bridget, is here," but before some of the campers mock her for using a surfboard on a lake without waves, she simply responds that she mistakenly believed there was a beach. She then walks to the other members of the group and almost hits a few of them with her board as she turns to retrieve her bags or say hello to the others. "All right, we've met a surfer girl. Can we all start the show right away?" Heather said. "Someone missed their double cappuccino macchiato this morning." "Everyone meet Noah," Chris says as he tends to his injured head and introduces the next competitor. Noah's sarcastic, cynical, and pessimistic attitude toward life was suited to his lazy way of asking, "Did you get the memo about my allegories?" He had dark brown eyes, combed brown hair, and a tan complexion, likely from his ethnic background. He wore a long white undershirt that covered his blue polo shirt, a red sweater vest, and simple faded gray cargo shorts. Although his physical appearance was ridiculous, Noah made up for it with his intelligence, sometimes isolating himself from others as a result. Chris simply sighs and remarks, "I'm sure it's around here somewhere," as Noah approaches the other campers and mocks Duncan's piercings while complaining about the camp. Duncan then lifts him up and threatens to get one of his own. "I came to win, so feel free to give up now and spare you all some hassle," Lashana reprimanded the campers sassily. "What's up, brother, give me some skin," Lashana says as she gives him a high five. Then, she turns to face Harold, who is staring at her with wide eyes. Lashana gave Harold a suspicious look and said, "I've never seen a woman like you before, you're just so big and loud," which made her almost choke Harold as almost everyone backed off. However, DJ and Bridget stopped her from killing Harold while he was imitating karate sounds and moves. "Some of this is what you want. Come on, string bean." "All right, campers, settle down," Chris says with a laugh. He then looks to see another boat anchored and says, "Ladies, welcome to the island, Katie and Sadie." Many campers covered their ears when two females in similar outfits ran off the boat and let out a high-pitched screech. Sadie and Katie are best friends who are sweet, sensitive, and emotional about everything. They may also like or dislike the same things. They frequently have similar interests in boys and matching sunburns. Sadie typically thinks with her head, while Katie thinks with her heart. With a shocked expression, Katie turned to face her sister in everything but blood and said, "Oh my God, look Sadie, it's a summer camp." "I know Katie," says Sadie, turning to face the other girl. "I had always dreamed of attending summer camp," before they both squeal again and hastily join the campers, she says. A scuffed-looking teenager who appeared to have just left his basement to join Total Drama is brought in by the next boat. He is wearing a faded green beanie that barely conceals his wild mullet, which covers his hazel eyes and reaches his small patch of hair on his chin. His sun-bleached green jacket covers his stained white undershirt, and his faded sweatpants are rolled up because he keeps stepping on them with his green hiking boots. Chris says, "Ezekiel, what's up man?" as he glances at the teenager. Ezekiel glances up at the sky and stupidly says, "I think I saw a bird," which makes many others laugh. Ezekiel approaches to the other members of the group, and Chris only sighs, "Ezekiel, I know you don't get out much, you've been homeschooled your whole life, you've been raised by freaky prairie people, just don't say much and try not to get kicked off too early," before saying. The next boat to arrive at the dock was a short, geeky teenager with slitted teeth and a combed-down brown hair that partially covered his blue eyes. He was wearing a light gray button-up shirt underneath a faded yellow polo with a red and green stripe, and his polo collar was popped, giving him the cool guy look to impress his fellow competitors. He was also wearing green running shoes and baggy blue jeans with the knees partially torn from wear, which added to his manly charm. "Cody, the code steer, the codemeister," Chris says, turning to face Cody. "Dude, I'm excited to be here," Cody said with a smile and a high five, before walking down the dock to where the other female contestants were standing. "I see all the ladies have already arrived, nice," Cody said. "Save it short stuff," Lashana scoffs, soothing him as the next boat pulls up. Chris remarks, "Eva, nice, glad to see you could make it," as Cody's foot gets hit by a bag of weights dropped by the next competitor. Physically observing her, the candidate who retreated from her abrasive demeanor already categorized her as the irritable, overly aggressive kind. "Look what these weights contain," as Eva drops her bag, Cody exclaims. She responds, "Yes," as Duncan informs DJ that it is entirely his. The next person to arrive sent a shockwave into the pier. "Hooray! Chris! What's going on?" he exclaims, "this is fantastic." "Whoosh," he shouts as he surveys the island. Chris chuckles, "Welcome, Owen." Owen, the biggest competitor on the show, was a tall teenager who weighed easily 300 pounds, had dirty blonde hair, and was acting like he had just woken up. He was wearing a white t-shirt with the Canadian flag printed in teal, light green cargo shorts that were nearly out of sight due to his size, and green high-top sneakers. Owen wasn't there for the big prize, but he was confident that he would win it, and his positive attitude made everyone want and support him. "Great to be here, man," says Owen as he stands up. "Yes. This is just so." He rambles while embracing Chris, which made him uneasy. "Fantastic," Gwen grinned and spoke on his behalf. Turning to her, Owen says, "Yes," before he could go to the others. He had to put Chris down and apologize after he yelled and asked her if he was on her team, which Gwen mockingly hoped while twirling her finger to make him appear insane. "Ah," says Chris, looking for the next boat. Courtney is here. As Chris assisted her in getting off the boat to join the other competitors, she said, "Thank you," and they started introducing themselves politely. "It's nice to meet you. Oh, wow, this is Justin, welcome, just to let you know, we chose you entirely by your looks," Chris says to the now-named Justin as she and several of the others turn to watch what appears to be a model walk down the ramp. With his straight, raven black, silk gel-glazed short hair, flawless eyebrows, bright blue eyes, clean teeth that gleamed from the sun's reflection, strong cheekbones, and a jawline that showed little to no fat, Justin had a good amount of muscle that was more on the leaner side of his body type. He wore a tight green t-shirt with a deep neck that showed off his toned chest and muscular arms, a tight six-pack that was visible through the shirt's fabric, baggy, faded, and torn jeans, and green sandals. As most of the girls practically swooned over him, Justin gave Chris a short fist bump and shrugged, saying, "I can deal with that," before moving on to the others. He spoke with Owen, who ended up humiliating himself by admiring his jeans. "Ah, here comes Izzy," Chris says as he turns to see the final boat arrive. She was waving enthusiastically when the second-to-last boat pulled up, but she didn't see where she was going. She tripped off the boat and slammed her chin into the dock, causing everyone to shudder before tumbling into the sea. As Izzy recovered, Courtney hurried over to help her get out of the water and wagging her hair like a dog. She got up and looked about with a lot of energy, asking, "So this is summer camp? That is awesome. Are we going to have lunch soon? Make you make papier-mâché here?" she asked fast, displaying her crazy demeanor and quirky attitude. "Great query." Since I was able to eat, Owen concurred with her. "All right everyone, before we get down to the wonderful additives, I have planned for all of you, we are waiting on one camper still," Chris said, coughing to catch the camper's attention. Courtney was the first to look around and say, "Excuse me, but Chris, there's already 22 of us here," while everyone else watched Chris with interest. "That's the number we were told was going to be before joining the show," she said, receiving some nods from the others. "And here comes our final contestant, Naruto Uzumaki, stunt devil and famous author of my favorite books," Chris replied with a silent hum before grinning and glancing out to the water. Everyone looked out to see the next camper approach, but instead of a boat, they saw someone speeding a jet ski. Using a jagged rock that protruded from the water and conveniently faced the dock, the driver of the jet ski was on a hazardous path. He increased his speed and used the rock as a ramp, sending him hurtling through the air. He pushed off the jet ski in midair and landed on the dock with a combat roll as it crashed into the sand. The new camper muttered, "That's what they pay me for," as he stood up and began to dust himself off. What they saw made all the females blush since it was the epitome of what a top catalog model looked like. Naruto stood in front of them, his eyes piercing violet, his face ripped of all baby fat, his hair reaching only to his shoulder, and his bright, sun-kissed blonde hair with tiny red streaks mixed in to give the impression that he had highlights, almost like Gwen. He had 6 scars, or tattoos, on his face, 3 on each side that appeared to be whiskers. His outfit was what brought the blushes as Naruto only wore an open ankle-length sleeveless coat showed chiseled abs and pecs, muscled arms were clearly visible showing all the female campers how much he cared for his body, light wrapping of bandages covered from waist to neck. But it left no room for imagination as he looked to be sculpted by a master. His coat was a midnight black color with red flames touching the outer edges. On the back of the coat seemed to be different types of animals, from a sand-colored raccoon with blue marking and 1 tail, a blue flamed colored cat with 2 tails and different color eyes, a spiked gray tortoise with only 1 eye and 3 tails, a red ape with 4 tails, a white dolphin-headed horse with 5 tails, a slug with 6 tails, a winged horn armor-like beetle with 7 tails, a purple ox-headed octopus with 8 tails, and lastly a reddish-orange 9-tailed fox. Each were in a circle as they surround one purple 3-ringed eye with 9 commas, 3 in each ring. He wore basic black slacks with an orange belt to hold them up, and he had 5 of them around his neck, which made it appear loaded. However, he didn't have the demeanor of someone wealthy. Instead, he exuded a warm and endearing aura. The 5 gems around his neck were all different colors: purple, orange, green, blue, and finally black, with the black in the middle separating the 4 from one another. Chris said, "Naruto, long time no see, how's the book?" But his response was simply another book. Chris took the book and opened it, but it contained nothing. "Are you telling me that you're stuck? I don't understand. I need this thing, man, you know." As Naruto signed and picked up the book, Chris virtually screamed out before turning to the cover and reading Ika Ika Paradise, Island Edition. Naruto's deep, rich voice made women swoon. "Work in progress, Chris, and you might end up in it if you try not to kill me," he continued, glancing back at Chris, who was virtually giddy with anticipation. He would be in the book, and the best thing is that he's doing it on his island. Naruto approached the other campers while Chris was in a stupor, grinning, just like Justin, saying, "Hey. Call me Naruto, but my name is Naruto Uzumaki." After everyone has calmed down from their shock, Cody is the first to comment, "Dude, that was awesome, how did you do that?" To which several of the others nod. Despite being in a dream world, Chris gave Naruto a slight nod and smiled, saying, "Well, I'm a stunt devil, I kind of just stole a jet ski from one of the sets since they planned on trashing it anyways." Chris was eager to inform Chef. Once more, a cycle of blushes occurs, ranging from small to enormous. A few males noted that it narrowed, thinking it was just another attractive boy, but they stopped noting that Naruto exuded a calmness that was not the kind of person you needed to battle for girls. "Devil, a stunt? Can you do anything else?" Bridget questioned, blushing slightly and grinning. She would be lying if she said Naruto wasn't attractive, but they had just recently met. Naruto leaned closer to her and gave her a gentle smack on the nose, saying, "That, my love, is for you to find out. You're adorable. What's your name?" Naruto's direct statement caused Bridget's face to flush. "Bridget." After Bridget left, Naruto turned to face Chris, who was still in a fog. He hoped his book wouldn't do this to the man, but whatever. "I'll remember that," Naruto said gently as Bridget strolled back to the other in an attempt to remove her blush. "Naruto, what did you give Chris?" "2 beauties in one day, lucky me," Naruto says as he turns to face Gwen. "What may your name be, Princess of the Dark?" If he's leaving Gwen's crimson face with a stammer, Naruto inquired with another smile. "My name is Gwen. It's good to meet you." Gwen and Bridget's faces turned redder than a tomato when I said, "You and Bridget both have lovely names, and what I gave him was a book I wrote. I'm not sure whether that's conceivable." "Could that be a book on sunshine?" Duncan inquired in a somewhat arrogant manner. Everyone's eyes widen and smiles as Naruto laughs and explains, "It's the book series created by my godfather before he passed away, Ika Ika. I only take the books he wrote and publish them in his name to honor for his memory." Naruto grins and says, "Yeah, I really didn't want anyone to know about it," glaring at Chris. "But the cat's out of the bag. I hope this doesn't change any way you guys look at me. I'm just a normal person," he said, laughing and rubbing the back of his head. "However, I also publish my own stories that I write myself, such as The Origami Princess and Her Protector, Snake in the Grass and the Fox on the Hunt, Queen of the Sea with her demon, and finally, The Medic Kisses and the Fox's Wounds, in addition to my own version of The Gusty Ninja, he says, shocking everyone even more. But since Chris told all of you already, I also published his other book, whose main character I was named after, he adds, shocking everyone even more. After calming down and approaching him with a pen and her two favorite books from the series, Gwen almost faints when she learns that he is the author of her favorite book series. Could I get your autograph? I love your books. My favorites are The Origami Princess and Her Protector, along with Snake in the Grass and Fox on the Hunt, she says. After handing her his autograph and grinning, Naruto replies, of course, always happy to meet someone who enjoys my books, turning to face the others. Is there anyone else who would like my autograph before we get started? He asks. As some of the campers, including Bridget, Izzy, Courtney, and shockingly Heather, arrive, he asks, I doubt we'll have the time later. How about the rest of you? A few of the male campers nodded slightly when Naruto asked them, but since he didn't see them take out any books, he concluded that they either didn't have them on their person or preferred to do it in a private setting to avoid damaging their reputation. All right, now that we're all here, let's be on our way, to the other side of the dock, Chris said, turning to the campers after finishing his reading of the book and laughing. As they followed him, he prepared the camera and said, all right, starting the first season I want a group photo before we start messing with your faces and kicking you out. Eventually, everyone positioned themselves with Naruto near the middle right side of the dock, with Bridget on his right behind him with her board, Gwen to his left, and Tent leaning against Gwen. Izzy somehow managed to settle herself on top of Naruto's shoulders, and both Gwen and Bridget gave her strange looks, wondering how she got up there. When Chris reached 3, the dock broke, sending everyone into the ocean. All right, on 3 everyone says Camp Wawankawa 1-2, he said. As the other wet ones merely moaned and moaned, Chris said, that's wonderful, laughing. All right, campers, get out and dry so I can show you around, starting with the campfire, before guiding them across the camp and pointing out the campfire area where Chris outlined the regulations, he says. Why, Whiskers, wow. I wanted to give the impression that I was running on the water, so I might have had you run around while you stayed above it, Izzy shouted with excitement as Naruto laughed. She was still there for him and someone else who was very special. As the camper reached the shore, Naruto muttered, sweet, but that's only in the movies, I can't actually stand on water, wiping the water from his eyes. The women began wringing the water out of their hair, and some men began to remove their shirts to follow suit. This caused some women to blush and turn away from the men, only to find that Naruto had removed his coat, causing many of the campers to blush and turn away before rushing to the campfire area in embarrassment. Lashana remarked, I'm telling you that boy had everything in the right places and mama likes, which caused all of the blushing girls to chuckle. This is Camp Wawankawa, your home for the next 8 weeks. The campers sitting around you will be your cabin mates, your competition, and maybe even your friends. As they listened, some campers started to look around to see who might be a good or bad friend. The majority of the female campers turned to face Naruto, who was standing next to Gwen with his head leaned back and staring at the sky. The camper who manages to stay on Total Drama Island the longest without being voted off will win 100,000, Chris concluded with excitement. What will the sleeping arrangements be, because I'd like to request a bunk under her, Duncan said first, pointing rapidly at Heather. Chris said that boys and females have separate cabins when Heather appeared shocked and asked if they were co-ed. Did a bullet there, Chris, can you imagine what your show would be if it was co-ed? Heather asked. Naruto's comment went over Lindsay's head when she asked if she could have a room by the lake because she was the prettiest, to which Chris and a few other guys agreed. Naruto's question got some looks from the guys and blushes from the girls, but Chris started to perspire until he realized that it was a lost chance for some amazing drama. When she felt a hand on her shoulder and looked into a $1,000,000 smile, Gwen moaned, "This can't be happening," as she signed while staring down at all the chaos. "Ah, is my princess of evil, Gwen-chan, unhappy with the way things are going? Wouldn't it be better if you and I worked together?" She usually pushes guys away, but with Naruto, she felt different and enjoyed it. After calming down a bit, she turned to face Naruto. "What?" Naruto said as he put his arm over her shoulder and pulled her in for a sideways embrace, almost crushing her against his body. "Chan." Groups, the others appeared perplexed as well. Chan is a Japanese suffix, just an affectionate term for a female friend or someone special, at least that's what the dictionary says here in Teams. While the others were shocked that Naruto already had a challenge, Chris butted in to stop him. "Not yet, Naruto, right now there is too many people, so we're about to start a challenge to get rid of one of you and fast," he said, adding that he and Chef knew the script because Naruto simply bribed them for it and that his contract was slightly different from the others. "But first, the rest of the tour," he said. Chris continues by explaining that during the competition, campers will always be on public camera and that they will be able to record their innermost thoughts on video diaries inside the confessional stalls, enabling viewers at home to understand your true feelings or to simply let you vent. Stations for confessions. "Gwen, this just sucks." Well, that's what she wanted to say to keep her cool, but after hearing Naruto say, he said his Princess of Darkness, "I know some other girls are probably already looking to get closer to him and Izzy the old ball. Wait, what am I saying?" She felt mildly happy. Only a few minutes have passed since we intended to say, now that she's used the confessional stalls, she truly has some things to think about. Following Lindsay, who initially didn't know where the camera was, she sat down and began discussing all the local hotties she had to compete against, which depressed her because she wants to win but can't compete against attractive guys. Then, in the next confession, a duck appeared without explanation wearing lipstick, and Owen simply farted. The communal shower, which Lindsay believed he had described as a confessional bathroom, the cabins with bunk beds arranged along the side walls, a few drawers for belongings, and a circular carpet in the center, where some of the girls complained about how dirty it looked and felt, followed by the mess hall, where everyone goes to eat, came next. Every camper meets Chef Hatchet, a buff black man with a bald mustache, soul patch, unibrow, deep voice, and rigid exterior. He usually walks around wearing an apron, chef hat, and yellow shirt with tan khaki and boots. Chef was actually a war veteran, and he never takes craps from anyone other than Chris and Naruto because they both had a similar past with PTSD. Most people couldn't understand, but he only takes craps because it was his friend and boss. "Thanks, Chef, it looks good," Naruto replies, smiling as he approaches and grabs his food. This surprises the chef, who mutters something about someone finally appreciating his cooking. Naruto sits down, and then, to the surprise of everyone who is staring at him, he starts eating. "What?" He shocks everyone by saying, "It would be impolite not to enjoy it, plus we have a challenge coming up and I'm going to need some energy." Before they understand the truth and reluctantly start eating their own food because it moved a little but they still ate it. "Okay everyone, due to having an odd number of contestants we will be having an elimination challenge right now. Before I split you up into teams and we go on with today's challenge," Chris says with a smile after he enters and instructs everyone to gather by the flagpole. "Okay everyone, due to having an odd number of contestants we will be having an elimination challenge right now. Before I split you up into teams and we go on with today's challenge," Chris says with a smile after he enters and instructs everyone to gather by the flagpole. Right now, after hearing what Chris had just told them, such was the general reaction of everyone there, with the exception of Naruto. Beth muttered, "But we just got here." As some of the campers nodded. Chris pulls out a medium-sized black ball with a timer on it and says, "Simon says. Too bad," he continues sing-song, "now our first challenge will be, I know, it sounds weird, but the rules are simple, you as the contestants will follow everything I do only if it is said after, Simon says, super simple," Chris says as he cheers as everyone looks at him funny. The twist is that I could tell someone individually or as a group, and if someone within that group decides not to do the task, the whole group would have failed. Got it? Everyone looked at each other quickly as they considered who would fail at something as simple as Simon says or not accomplish something that was stated. In the end, it doesn't matter who wins or loses first because all of you will have the right to vote off whoever for this first challenge since your teams have yet to be made, so choose wisely because this person could be a strong competitor later down the road or a meat shield for you to use if things get bad, Chris said at that point. Now everyone gets at least 6 feet away from another so we can start today's challenge, and don't worry, we'll start out easy in the beginning. As each camper followed instructions, Chris used the time to research potential victims. Although all of the campers appeared prepared to begin the task, Chris discovered his first target. "How long does it take you to do your hair in the morning, Lindsay?" Chris inquired, but she gave him a dubious glance. Lindsay's eyes fluttered several times as she asked, "Why, Kyle? Do you truly want to realize that your hair is different from mine?" "Well, first I have to take a 30-45-minute shower and I use this shampoo that is just to dye for you. Don't actually dye from it, so don't worry, just don't get it in your eyes. I did that once and it messed up my whole routine. I had to restart my entire shower because of it, so, after another shower Lindsay said, receiving only an enthusiastic nod from Chris while Katie and Sadie giggled at the slight burn she gave him. "Cease," suddenly, Chris said, "You're out, Lindsay." Chris simply grinned and said, "Don't worry, Katie and Sadie, you're out too. I didn't say Simon say before asking you the question." "What?" Their faces were filled with complete bewilderment and astonishment. "We didn't even do anything," Sadie nodded her head as quickly as she could as Katie shot back at Chris. Everyone looked shocked as Chris concluded in a sing-song voice, "Wrong, you laughed when Lindsay asked me why I wanted to know about her hair. I didn't say Simon says to laugh," which was an extreme version of Simon says if you couldn't laugh accidentally. "Now make your way to the campfire area and watch for the rest of the campers," he said. Lindsay, Katie, and Sadie left as everyone watched, and Chris's eyes darted to him as he looked around the crowd with his finger on his chin. "Harold, Simon say to balance on one leg and make ninja noises," Harold said, quickly following instructions and doing nothing else. "Cody, since you're such a ladies' man, Simon says to have a fake date with Heather," Cody said, looking at Heather, who narrowed her eyes and clenched her fist until they turned white. "Heather, Simon says you have to enjoy the date, no matter what Cody says or does, and Beth, you're the server for their wonderful evening. Congratulations, Naruto, Duncan, Eva, and Gwen. You will all be the main stars of Total Drama's inaugural tea party." Just when you thought Heather was crazy, Chris backed up a few steps due to Eva's repeated eyebrow twitches. "Chef will be right out to set the table, I expect it to be good," Chris said, and once he went on, you could see Chef was already waiting for them. "Simon says to roll around in the puddle of mud till I say stop," Chris said, turning to face Justin. "Can't dude, sorry," was Justin's quick reply when he noticed a puddle of mud conveniently located not even 30 feet from them when he looked behind Chris. "Are you certain?" If you don't accomplish this, you'll be expelled. I mean, it's just a puddle of mud. Chris inquired. Positive, do you think I can afford to roll around in mud right now? It's not only my first day, but this face right here doesn't do that unless he's at the spa. Since they had only chosen him for his appearance, Chris nodded when he explained his explanation. Well then, you're out, head over to the campfire and wait for the others, Justin said with one of his endearing smiles before heading off, his head held high and relieved that he had avoided getting dirty. After saying, another one down, albeit not as entertaining, but I'll take it, Chris turned to face Jeff, who smiled at him and hoped he wouldn't do anything inappropriate. Jeff, you like to party, right? Jeff looked at him, unsure if he would nod or say anything. Of course you do. Well, we have two campers who have never partied before. Simon says to show Noah and Ezekiel how to party like you, Jeff said, giving him a killer cheer as he rushed to get Noah and Ezekiel. After all, if they had never partied before, they couldn't be bad at it, could they? When Chris saw that Owen had not said Simon says as he was leaving, he smirked slyly and said, Owen, big guy, here is a can of beans, you can't eat them, you have to stare at them until you won. Even though they had just left the mess hall, Owen was hungry from the journey and shouted out softly, "Aw man," after Chris had departed. Talk about extreme, doesn't Simon say to count every grain of sand on this beach and tell me what number you get, Tyler? Chris made fun of him before laughing and leaving. Simon tells Trent to smash your instrument. Don't worry, you can speak at this moment. Chris, you are crazy. My guitar is my only instrument, thus I can't break it. A few campers turned to face Trent as he cried back, don't make me do this, man. Chris gave him a mildly amused smile and said, are you attempting to throw the challenge? Simon advises to break it though. With a final glance at his guitar, he held it high above his head and said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Trent glanced first at the campers already at the campfire and then at the ones still competing, as if he was trying to increase his chances. Some of the campers had not yet received their Simon Says task, while those who were doing it appeared to be trying to stay in the long run. Chris placed a hand on his shoulder to consult him, but that was all he said before slamming it to the ground and breaking it into bits, falling to his knees and shedding tears over all the wonderful moments they shared. Trent turned to face Chris, who only smiled slightly and returned the smile, saying, hey man, it's okay, you completed the task, I'm proud of you. Have I won? With a shaky voice, Trent inquired. The guitar you broke was just a prop we switched out, Chris said, shaking his head no. This caused Trent's eyes to widen. Here's your real guitar, Chris said, before removing Trent's guitar from behind his back. Trent joyfully grabbed it and held on to it as though his life depended on it. Now smash it, Chris said. I didn't even tell him Simon Says for this one. Oh well, Trent said, glancing at Chris before yelling and rushing to the campfire, content to lose if his guitar wasn't broken again. Chris then departed with a roar of laughter. After saying, Simon Says dance till you drop, Chris turned to the other campers who hadn't been given a Simon Says assignment, like Lashana and Courtney. Lashana looked thrilled and immediately started dancing as she thought of her favorite song, while Courtney glanced at Lashana and then back at Chris as he began to leave. Lashana, I don't know how to dance. Chris glanced at Harold and saw that he was still making ninja noises, but his form was starting to falter. DJ, walk over to Harold Chris said, walk over to Harold and be mean to him. Like say something you would never say before, don't worry you can tell him it's you Simon Says so you don't have to feel bad about a potential friend. I don't know if I can do that Chris, I'm not a mean person by heart, DJ said, turning to face Harold after looking at Chris. Wait, You didn't even say Simon Says to me, so I won't be doing that, DJ attempted to convince Chris. Just as Chris opened his mouth to speak, someone yelled, "You guys are complete party poopers." 10 minutes prior to now. "So, I've heard that you guys haven't been to a party. Don't worry, today is your lucky day because I'm going to teach you," Jeff enthusiastically told Noah and Ezekiel. Noah said, "Oh, I'm so excited," demonstrating his excitement with an uncharacteristic demeanor. "What is a party?" Ezekiel inquired. "What is a party?" "The music, the fun, the unsupervised nonsense that comes with drinking beer for those who are of legal drinking age, the fact that it's a place where you can just let go and have fun without worrying about tomorrow until you wake up with the most killer headache, it's simply the most beautiful thing on the planet. Imagine if this island were full of sexy babes in only bikinis or topless. Pool parties are the best way to experience this." "Yeah," Ezekiel said, picking his nose, "I've never been to a party." Ezekiel stopped as Jeff replied, "Well, for one, we don't pick out noses at parties," and Noah gave him a disgusted look. "Ezekiel, I need you to be more passionate since your vibe will make people stop going to their high man." "What are you even good at?" Jeff inquired gravely if Chris was kidding when he said that he was brought up by strange prairie people. Ezekiel began the assignment by saying, "Well, I can touch my nose with my tongue." Jeff had never been bad at parties, so Noah's comment, "Super gross and I'm not having a good time at this party, Jeff, you really suck at this," made him jump. "Well, you guys aren't really good at this either," Jeff said. "All right, do you like this drink?" "I made it with the best stuff," Jeff said, passing his imaginary cup and taking a sip. Ezekiel took a sip of his phony beverage and then picked his nose once again, saying, "I don't taste anything." Jeff smiled when Noah added, "Hold on a second, I taste something." "Yeah, I definitely taste something, it tastes like nothing, this is stupid," he said. "You people are such party poopers," Jeff shouted, his cheeks flushed, drawing every camper's attention to him. "Are Jeff, Noah, and Ezekiel enjoying themselves at your party?" Chris smirked knowingly as he asked. "No, they just suck," Jeff shouted back to Chris as he approached. Ezekiel just plucked or licked his nose, and Noah just complained. "It's so annoying." "You picked your nose, you," Bridget and Tyler both shouted simultaneously. "How many grains of sand have you counted, Tyler?" Chris shouted back immediately. "What? Like 600, wait, was it 500? "No, it was 700. Tyler asked himself. "You can't remember?" "I asked you to tell me how much you ended up counting, and it looks like you're out," Chris said. "At least it is over," Tyler moaned quietly before regretfully making his way to the campfire area. In all honesty, Chris didn't know what to do for her and was just going to make her cluck like a chicken and spoil the tea party or Heather's date. "Bridget, I haven't even told you Simon Say, but you already talked and I never said you could talk, so you're out too," he told her. Bridget said, "That's so unfair," as she kicked some sand and turned to leave. "This is fantastic," Chris said, turning back to face Jeff. "You agree?" "Noah and Ezekiel's inability to teach means that all three of you are out, head to the campfire," he said, receiving a brief nod in return. The only confirmation Chris received was Izzy standing there. "I should really check up on Heather's date and the tea party, but first," Chris said, looking at Izzy, who had moved from her location after being instructed to keep 6 feet apart. "Izzy, Simon Say don't move, blink, or say anything," Chris said. "I would ask you again about being mean, but it doesn't matter now," Jeff said as he turned to face DJ before he left. Simon say to take Harold to the campfire since you both are out anyways, Chris said, looking behind DJ to see Harold had fallen on the ground, panting, still making ninja noises, but only able to move his fingers. DJ glanced at Chris, Harold, and back again. How am I out? You didn't say, Simon says to me the first time. Chris grinned as he turned to face DJ and said, You're out, Simon says, then he started to chuckle and go. Uncool man, DJ murmured before heading to Harold's house. Chris decided to go back the way he came after checking on Heather and Cody's date. He passed Lashana and Courtney and noticed that Lashana was dancing, but not Courtney. Courtney, what happened? Chris inquired, do you grow weary of dancing? Simon said, look at Lashana, don't stop. A quick peek over revealed Lashana dancing provocatively, her hips undulating and her head drenched in perspiration. Don't look at me, sugar, I had her dancing just fine, she just didn't like the way I dance, Lashana said. I use all what my mama gave me, she just felt too embarrassed in such an open setting. I see, Chris said, in any case both of you are out since I assigned this task to both of you and you failed as a team. Don't worry girl, we'll get you dancing with all you got in no time. How else are you supposed to tease all the teens you seen in the clubs? Lashana said, pausing her dance to turn to face Courtney. Courtney quickly responded, I don't go to clubs, as she and Lashana made their way to the campfire. Chris laughed and carried on walking, only to discover that Owen had locked his legs out and fainted from staring at his can of beans. He's out, but at least I can tell him he can eat the beans, probably cheer him up, Chris said. 20 minutes prior. After shouting at Cody, all right loser, let's get this date over with, Heather turned to face Cody. This is where you're taking me? You're so pitiful, God. Beth put a reassuring hand on Cody's shoulder and helped him get through the insults to his self-esteem, saying, it's not like it's a real date, Cody, it will be okay, while Cody winced at this. After giving Beth a big smile and pumping his chest, Cody turned to face Heather and said, you look good today, Heather. I have a great candlelight dinner and the best view of the ocean planned for the evening. Cody concluded by pointing to the dock where the boat had dropped them off and saying, let me get that chair for you. Ouch, watch it you loser, you pulled the chair out right onto my shin, Heather spat at Cody as she followed him to their table with narrowed eyes. Heather was sitting on the sand when Cody put on a little smile and soon apologized, saying, you call this supper, there's nothing here, worst date ever. Cody softly retorted, giving Heather a furious look. Well, the server hasn't arrived yet, so that would explain why there is no food, he said. Hi there, Beth said, my name is Beth, and I'll be your server for today. Can I start you with something to drink, in an attempt to stop Heather from killing Cody, even on reality television? Hey, I'll just take a water please, Cody said, grinning at Beth. Heather, would you like anything to drink? Cody glanced at Heather and flinched slightly when he saw that she was still glaring at him. As soon as Heather turned to face Beth, she could see the anxious perspiration running down the side of her head. You have a bottle of Romani Conti, don't you? Heather inquired. Beth glanced at Heather and then back at Cody. She didn't know what Heather was requesting, but she said, of course we do, I'll be right back with your drinks, but she didn't go anywhere, she simply stepped back a few paces and began to worry about Cody, hoping he would be all right. In an attempt to relieve some internal stress, Cody tugged on his collar. So, Heather, what do you do for a living? You should know after all you do work for me, I just let you take me on this date so I can show you that you'll never have a chance with me, said Heather, scowling at Cody while holding her nose high. Cody sank into his chair, seemingly to protect himself from Heather's continued attacks, but it didn't stop him. Not only do you work as the help, but you don't even do a good job at it. I never knew someone who couldn't even set the table correctly, like look at our table for the date, there isn't one, just how worthless are you? Look, you can't even sit up straight and talk to me, Cody said, trying to hide beneath the table after Heather had finished her tirade. Enough of it. You can't talk to him like that, he's not some help for you. Chris gave you this challenge and told you to be nice. You have just been a big meanie the entire time and haven't even tired on this date, Beth said, interrupting Heather since she was sick of hearing her continual bitching. So, you're just as bad as him, you are the server, I am the customer, you must serve me at my beck and call, now where's my wine? Heather turned to face Beth unaffected, as Cody looked at her as a savior. Beth retorted, oh, okay, well I'm sorry to inform you not we don't have your wine and never will, to which Heather yelled in frustration as she got to her feet and stamped on the floor. Heather turned to Cody and said, this is the worst date ever. You are both worthless and incapable of doing anything properly. You are terrible at this, and it will be shocking if you ever find a partner who can put up with more than 5 minutes of your repulsive appearance. Heather turned to face Beth and said, you're a farm girl who spends her days rolling in mud and acting like a pig because she really is one. I'd be surprised if you got a boyfriend, but since you're both going to be single, you can have each other since this date is cancelled. Heather then abruptly left, making her way to the campfire with the other eliminated competitors. Chris attempted to inform her that she was eliminated, but Heather stepped on his foot instead. Heather, you're still out, Chris shouted, you two are out too, head to the campfire when you're ready, I got a tea party to look at, which made her scream once again and made Cody and Beth laugh as well. You did your best, Cody, and I think you'll do just fine when you get a real girlfriend. I don't think you're worthless at all, so don't let what Heather said bring you down, okay? Beth and Cody smiled as they looked at each other. Beth, who had a nice flush, walked over to Cody and kissed him on the cheek. I won't just as long as you don't do the same because I don't think you look like a pig at all and you were a great server even if we didn't get past ordering drinks, if you stood up for me like that, I have no doubt you'll find a good boyfriend either, Cody replied. Thanks, she said before returning to the campfire as Cody gripped his cheek in shock. Chris gave Cody the thumbs up and turned to go. The codmeister still has it, Cody muttered to himself before grinning and returning to camp. 20 minutes prior to, has anyone ever hosted a tea party before? Naruto asked, turning to face Eva, Duncan, and Gwen. The four of them gazed at one another, wondering how someone could host a tea party if none of them. I know how. Eva, Gwen, and Naruto turned to face Duncan, who was blushing slightly in embarrassment, and said, I have a little sister, okay, he fired back angrily, hoping that his image wouldn't be damaged. Eva wisely remarked, well isn't that sweet, as she sat with her arms and legs crossed in the sand. Following Eva's lead, everyone sat down and gazed at Duncan, who had his hands covering his face, knowing that he would later regret doing so. Would anyone like some tea? He inquired nicely. Everyday tea gatherings with his younger sister caused him to revert to his former self. Naruto's loud laughter was the only thing that broke the two females' stunned silence as they gazed at Duncan. That is hilarious. Duncan the hardcore punk knows how to tea party, he said, laughing again, as Eva grinned and Gwen giggled a little. Yes. What humiliating things did you and your brother do when you were younger? Duncan responded with a shout. After laughing, Naruto wiped a tear from his eye and said, I wouldn't know, grinning at Duncan as he poured himself some fake tea. I didn't have any, which kind of makes me jealous, but I bet it was fun nonetheless. But pouring his tea, Duncan smirked and said, it wasn't that fun, but he could only recall the enjoyable moments he had experienced. Naruto, are you an only child? When Gwen asked, he smiled at her, which made her blush a little. I guess you can say that, I was an only child. I've met so many people that I can call my family, so if did have a sibling I wouldn't make much of a difference, Naruto said, humming as he offered to pour Gwen's tea and then doing the same for Eva, despite her refusal. All eyes moved to Eva, who averted her gaze quietly, and said, I have a lot of friends at the gym, both guys and girls, and all we do is talk about each other's problems when we lift, some good and some bad, and the bad one definitely makes you want to lift more. Duncan's remark, I'm guessing all you have is bad memories then, caused Eva to growl. You're a talker, and I understand why I began lifting. What makes you a punk? Did your father ever beat you? Eva retaliated with a jab. Eva, Gwen called out her name as though she was going too far. Sometimes he did, Duncan replied with a smile as he drank his tea. I mean, we all grow up differently. My mother died a few years after my baby sister was born. My dad became an alcoholic. I could take his beating as long as it kept him from my sister when he gets into his moments. That's why I'm a punk, to resent him. Without approaching him, Gwen whispered softly, Duncan, as though to encourage him. I think you did a good thing, Duncan, Naruto replied. Protecting your little sister is all the sweeter, so, I'm glad to meet the punk with a soft spot and I'm sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago and I've healed from it, Duncan assured him. Duncan turned to face Eva and asked, you mentioned that you knew why you lifted. Why is that? It's only fair I guess, and sorry about what I've said, Eva said, looking at Duncan. Duncan simply waved her away. There was this girl in school that I went to, all prissy and a goody two-shoes, flaunting all her goods around for everyone to see, Eva remarked. Tell me about it, Gwen inadvertently said as she glanced at Eva. Hear it later, Goth Queen, Duncan informed her. Gwen, you're a queen now. How come you didn't tell me? I should have bought you a gift, but I'm so sorry I didn't know. Oh no, I've been calling you the wrong title this entire time, my Goth Queen, please spare me from execution, I'll do anything, said Naruto, who immediately began to bow. Look, I was speaking, Eva screamed at him to stop talking, saying, I was talking, plus any more and I think you'll make Gwen pass out, which caused Naruto to look up and see Gwen's face completely flushed and steaming from her ears. Now as I was saying, there was this girl and for some reason she had her mark on me, back then I wasn't all muscle, Eva said, looking around to see if anyone else was listening. I was cute, she said, her blush deepening as the three of them silently laughed at her. Gwen slowly approached Eva and put an arm around her shoulder, saying, this girl was so envious of me that she used the guy I like against me. They humiliated me in front of the whole school and it made me feel so weak, but Eva didn't reject the gesture. So that day I decided to get strong, so strong that by the time high school ended I decided to break both their legs, the guy and girl, in front of the school, make them feel weak like I felt, Eva concluded, and then Gwen returned to her initial position after an evil smirk. Gwen glanced to Duncan and Eva, praying that Eva wouldn't lose her cool over Duncan's comment. However, she offered Duncan a slight grin before bursting into laughter. Thanks, you really don't think it was too much, the three of them said, hoping that Eva's chuckle wasn't malevolent and that she wouldn't turn on them and break their legs. Not at all. Duncan reminded her, should have broken their arms too while you're at it, which made them both giggle and caused Naruto and Gwen to exchange strange looks before dismissing it. You know it's good to let things out once in a while, Naruto said to Eva. It's also nice to know that you can laugh every now and then, instead of being all mean and scary, he said. He then tried to slap Eva on the back, but she grabbed his hand and Duncan was hiding behind Gwen, who was 15 feet further away from their previous location. "Hey, what are you guys doing? Why are you so far away? What's causing me to feel cold?" Naruto rapidly fired questions, not knowing that Eva was towering behind him with a glint in her eye. "Huh? Hey Eva, how are you? Scary and mean, huh?" Eva cracked her knuckles quickly and said, "I'll show you mean and scary." With a side remark, "Why?" Naruto leaped in alarm as Eva attacked him, causing a cloud of smoke to emerge from random arms and legs. "What was it I did? I'm ticklish, stop it." "You know," Duncan said, looking at Gwen, who was wearing a contemplative expression, "you and Eva can make quite the power couple," she concluded with a smile. Duncan had emerged from behind Gwen when Eva was beating up Naruto with a sigh of relief. Duncan blushed after giving Gwen a startled glance. "And no, we won't," she defended. "Don't go saying things like that," she said. "Why?" "Fearful that she will assault you," Gwen made a joke with him. "Fat chance," Duncan said, avoiding eye contact with Gwen because he knew she was grinning at him the entire time. "I may like my women strong, but nothing," Gwen interrupted. "Yes, but what about Naruto and you, counting back," Duncan said, "his goth queen, huh?" Gwen looked at the ground as her blush returned tenfold. "He was just joking, he didn't know what he was talking about," she said. "All right, so who's scared now?" "You two would make a good couple," Duncan said with a knowing smirk, "but you have to initiate contact before someone else does." Initially silent, Gwen gradually smiled and prepared to ask Duncan another question. "Uncle, I donate." Naruto shouted, "You'd better." "You're up, Gwen," Eva informed her. "Duncan had a reason for being a punk and I for lifting. Why are you all goth?" Eva smirked and responded, saying she had a good time and was glad she had at least made some friends during this pointless tea party. She asked bluntly. Gwen glanced at the three of them and signed before sagging in her place. Naruto reminded her before she began, "Not there's nothing wrong with it, Gwen. We like you for who you are," which caused her to blush as Duncan gave her a knowing smirk. "It's nothing crazy. My mother wanted a beauty pageant star like she was, like my sister was. She wanted both of us to be the ultimate tag team, but I didn't want to do it. Beauty pageants weren't my thing, the problem was that my mother didn't understand it," Gwen told them. She felt a hand on her shoulder and noticed that Naruto had moved over to offer assistance. "It got worse as the years went by. She showed more love for my sister than me, so I ended up being rebellious for it, skipping school, staying out late, hanging out with the wrong people. Sometime I think that she didn't love me as a child and just wanted to throw me out. I knew she didn't feel that way now because she was my mom and would always love me, but as a kid I didn't think like that, but it was alright though because I met Crimson and Ennui. They are like my best friends and it's so awesome I meet them," Gwen said, as she began to cry, and Naruto pulled her closer into a sideways hug. As she finished her story, she noticed that she had her arms wrapped around him like he had her, which made her blush and make her reluctantly let go. "Thanks," Naruto said with a sly smile and a nod before removing his arms. "While that sucks and all, I'm happy you at least got some good friends out of it," she said to Eva. Duncan said, "Same, Crimson and Ennui sound like cool people. Gwen-chan, I would at least try talking to your mother next time you see her, what you just told us. I know she'll want to hear it from you in person as well," Naruto says to Gwen. Gwen grinned and gave the three of them a nod. "Hey Naruto. You mentioned to us that you were the only kid, but what was your parents' personality like?" "I wouldn't know, I was an orphan from birth," Naruto said, grinning sadly as he turned to face Gwen. Gwen said, I'm sorry I didn't know Naruto, as the three of them stared at him in disbelief. It's alright Gwen, that's what I meant when I said, I guess you can say I'm an only child, but still, Duncan attempted to assist, but Naruto shook his head to stop him. Naruto grinned and said, it's okay, I knew they loved me or else I would be here. You can ask if you want, he said to them. How did they pass away? It was Eva who said it. Gwen couldn't take it any longer and jumped at Naruto, crying into his arms and saying, as terrible as it is, I know they loved me, I have pictures of them back home, so there's no need to cry, as he calmly rubbed her back. My mother passed after the childbirth, some rare complication the doctors didn't foresee, and my father was racing over from work to the hospital and got into a car accident. He died on impact, Gwen said. Duncan pointed out that, Naruto, dude, you're the one crying too, causing him to wipe his eyes and feel tears streaming down his cheek. What's happening over here? As soon as Gwen released Naruto, she wiped her eyes and smiled and nodded at him before staring at Chris. But regrettably, none of you were enjoying tea, which makes all of you out. Chris's voice boomed, whatever tea party this is must rock, I can just smell the drama. Before complaining to the campfire, the four of them gave Chris a startled look. They were all pleased to get closer to one another, though some more than others. Chris said, let's see, to himself, is that everyone? Using his fingers he started count campers until it hit him, Izzy. The Simon Says challenge today is won by you. Definitely. Returning to the campfire, alright, congrats on your first task, camper. Now that this challenge is officially off the books, you are all voting for who gets kicked off the island and why, right now, Chris exclaimed with excitement. And, to make it even sweeter, Izzy, as the winner you have the power of 2 extra votes to use against someone, use them wisely, Chris said to the 23 campers, who were mostly wearing sorrowful expressions after failing the Simon Says challenge. The majority of campers turned to face Izzy right away, who was grinning as she looked around the group to see who she would choose. Cody has my vote. My date was awful, shouted Heather. It was terrible because of you, Beth hurried back. You were also a poor server. Speaking back to a consumer, I vote for Beth instead. It was just getting started, and Chris thoroughly enjoyed the ruckus as each camper began yelling out names of people they wanted to see and why. How about Justin? He didn't even complete the task. Have you noticed me? Was Justin's reply with a smile, causing his teeth to glint in the sunlight, getting some of the female campers to swoon over him. Beside DJ didn't do it either. I couldn't. Chris asked me to be mean to someone. I wasn't raised like that. Treat other the way you want to be treated. Duncan shot him down, saying, you really shouldn't be on this show then, and he would have continued if Naruto hadn't laid a hand on his shoulder. I propose we remove Ezekiel or Noah from office. They have no idea how to have a party, Jeff shouted, gesturing to an unenthusiastic Noah and Ezekiel who were, you. Once more, you're picking your nose, Bridget called out for everyone to pause and observe Ezekiel, who had not stopped despite everyone's attention. What? Why don't we simply vote out one of the girls? I have to get it out. Unaware of the eyes watching him, Ezekiel said, I doubt they'll make it to the end, as he flicked his bugger off his finger. Bad move, Tyler remarked. Was it actually what he said? DJ turned to face the other men. Naruto said, dead man walking, and he retreated a few paces like the other men. I absolutely adore this drama. Chris threw his hands in the air and exclaimed, what does that mean to you? Eva cracked her knuckles and walked in Ezekiel's direction as she asked, I'm just saying that it's mostly going to be a guy winning in the end because we are just stronger than girls. I mean we got the most muscle here already, Ezekiel said while staring at the other men. I mean look at Naruto and them, they just look stronger so, don't mention my name. The other guys gave Naruto a little nod in response to his statement, I got my ass kicked by women almost all my life. Whether they were moms or just girlfriends, they weren't scared to kick someone in the ass. Eva mutely declared, I'm going to kill him, and proceeded to seize him. She clearly succeeded, hoisting Ezekiel over her head and hurling him from the campfire to the dock of shame. Proves my point, Naruto said to the other men before stealthily turning to face Duncan. You think she'll do that for you? He whispered to him, making sure no one else could hear. Naruto was rocked in the back of the head and collapsed to the ground instead of receiving a spoken response. Idiot. That was easy, Chris muttered, I kind of hoped for more drama, but in the end, a camper got kicked off the island. Chris grinned as he looked out to the campers and said, now that the challenge is finally over, I'm giving you campers a few hours to get settled before we start the actual challenge for today. When you return, I'll also be assigning you to your team for the next 8 weeks, so be prepared for the next challenge and remember to pack some swimwear, before departing, most likely to cool off in his ACRV, Chris told him.